The first thing that morning that pulled me out of bed wasn't the light. It was the sight of Mrs. Carmichael's minivan, nose deep in my garage. My garage. The one with my oil-stained floor, the rickety workbench, the whole mess that smells like late nights and old radiator fluid. For a beat, I thought I was still dreaming. Then I saw the chrome glint under the fluorescent strip and knew I wasn't. Her bumper was almost kissing my toolbox. I rubbed my face and wished I could rub the whole thing away. That familiar little honk was nowhere yet, but my chest was already heating up. If she was here, clipboard would be out, outrage would be cued. The front door opened and the smell of muffins, too perfect, store-bought, floated in. Of course it did. Mrs. Carmichael couldn't come without the full suburban soundtrack. Her steps on my porch, firm, opinionated, taught my stomach a new kind of knot. What is your car doing in my garage?" I asked, keeping my voice steadier than my hands. I could feel them trembling, though I tried to pretend they weren't. "Oh, I just needed a spot for a minute," she purred, sugary sweet and sharp as a paper cut. "There's a committee meeting. Couldn't find parking." "You don't mind, right?" she added, like that made it any less ridiculous. "Actually, I need to use the garage today." "Could you move it?" I said, trying the neighborly thing for the 100th time. "Oh, honey, relax," she said, waving it off. But her eyes had that particular sheen, the one that made suggestion sound like directive. By the time she peeled away 30 minutes later, I was seething. I circled the house, plotting petty revenge like some amateur schemer. Call the HOA? Passive-aggressive notes? Nothing felt satisfying. Then I had a thought so delicious it made me grin. 2 weeks. My trip was 2 weeks away. Why not make her problem into my vacation favor? I fetched the old padlock from the shed, clicked it around her steering column like a neat little clamp, not cruel. Just a lesson in consequences. I imagined the mild chaos when she discovered it. It felt oddly righteous. I zipped my suitcase shut, the padlocks click a tiny drumbeat of payback in the still morning. I left with a smile stuck to, my face in the neighborhood oblivious to the storm I'd hatched. 2 weeks later, the air smelled like hot asphalt and the leftover guilt of the stunt. Coming home felt lighter. My trip had been everything I'd hoped and more, and I dragged my suitcase across the driveway with a spring in my step. The street was its usual sleepy self, sprinklers hissing, a lawnmower grumbling like a distant engine, birds pretending nothing ever goes wrong. My palms itched with anticipation as I stood at the garage threshold. My sanctuary still carried that faint, honest scent of oil. There it was, the minivan, parked like it owned the place. Time had been kind. The van was dust-streaked, dotted, with a scatter of brown leaves that seemed to be staging a tiny protest on the roof. I felt a small, vindicated glow. "Hello," I called, stepping in. Silence hummed back. Excellent. I leaned on my workbench, pretending to tinker while I soaked up the scene. Then, the jangle of keys. My stomach flipped. Her voice cut the quiet, high, tight, threaded with fury. "Who locked my car?" I stayed put, blank-faced, feigning interest in a ratty toolbox. Her footfalls thudded like punctuation on the concrete. I heard her jab at the steering wheel, rattle the handle, test the locks. You locked me." "In my own car?" she screeched, pacing like an animal in a show cage. I let the smile spread slowly across my face. "Technically, this is my garage," I said, as calm as a man announcing the weather. "Thought you could use a reminder about boundaries." Color climbed her face, nostrils flaring in an almost comical way, but her voice stayed sharp. "Boundaries? I'm the HOA president. I have rights." "This is unacceptable! People will hear about this." I leaned back, barely hiding a laugh as her screams ricocheted off the garage walls. Outside, neighbors began peeking from behind curtains and blinds, probably wondering why the county's most notorious HOA president was having a meltdown in someone else's garage. Then came the sound that twisted my stomach into knots, the relentless honk of her car horn. Not the polite morning beep, but a continuous, desperate blast echoing down the street. My subtle act of revenge had just detonated like fireworks in the quiet neighborhood. I swallowed hard. This wasn't going to be contained, not even close. Somehow I knew the next hours would be absolute chaos. By the time I stepped outside, the cul-de-sac had transformed. My peaceful street now felt like the set of a suburban reality show, the only prize being utter mayhem. Neighbors peeked over fences, some filming, some whispering, all captivated. Mrs. Carmichael paced before the minivan, clipboard raised like a general surveying troops. "This is harassment! Harassment! I'm filing complaints! I'm calling the city!" Her voice cracked, a mix of rage and disbelief, and I could almost see smoke curling from her ears. I took a deep breath, forcing calm that felt laughably out of place. "Mrs. Carmichael, I think you might have misunderstood property boundaries," I said evenly. "The garage is part of my property. Parking here without permission isn't just rude, it's illegal." She froze, probably calculating how to weaponize the HOA bylaws. Then her eyes narrowed. "Illegal? You think locking me in my own vehicle is legal?" I shrugged, leaning against the garage door. "It's just a padlock. No damage, no theft. But it makes a point." By now, the commotion had drawn more neighbors, heads peeking over fences, whispers buzzing like static. A young couple across the street muttered loudly enough for me to hear, "Is she really screaming about a garage?" Her face turned crimson as she stomped across my lawn, muttering about lawsuits, city councils, and moral decay. I could practically see her plotting, the meticulous fury only a lifelong HOA president could conjure. Then, like slow-motion thunder, her phone rang. She fumbled it, almost dropping it, and I caught the name on the screen, HOA board. Panic replaced fury in her eyes. They know," she whispered, as if saying it aloud could undo the truth. I smirked. The entire HOA machine had just been triggered, and there was no turning back. Moments later, the HOA board arrived, and the scene looked like a suburban battlefield. Mrs. Carmichael waved her clipboard, phone pressed to her ear, pacing frantically. Neighbors gathered like spectators at a minor league football game, whispers buzzing through the air. "Emily," one board member said. Adjusting her glasses, voice clipped and official. "We received a complaint. Multiple complaints. What happened here?" Mrs. Carmichael erupted, pointing at me as if I'd personally offended the entire HOA universe. "He locked my car in his garage without permission. I can't even—" Her voice cracked. I raised a hand, keeping calm even as my heart raced. "Let me clarify. I found your vehicle in my garage. I asked you to move it. You refused. So, yes." I placed a padlock on the steering wheel. "No damage, no theft. Just a reminder, this is private property." The board member scribbled notes weighing the legal merits. "And you left town?" she asked skeptically. "Yes," I admitted. "Vacation planned." I let the silence stretch a beat, broken only by the minivan horn, now wailing again. A few neighbors stifled laughter. Finally, the board chair spoke. "While your method is unconventional," she said carefully, "technically the property belongs to the homeowner, so you're within your rights. We strongly suggest better communication next time, and perhaps less dramatic responses." Mrs. Carmichael's face drained of color. Her furious yelling turned to muttered threats as she stormed off, repeating something about lawsuits, city councils, and moral decay. The minivan, finally freed from its 2-week imprisonment, crept backward out of my garage like a defeated beast. I exhaled, a slow, victorious release. Neighbors clapped quietly, half smiling, clearly relishing the spectacle. I smiled back, the calm satisfaction of someone who'd survived a full-blown Karen catastrophe without losing their mind or their car. That night, I locked the garage and poured a glass of wine, reflecting on the absurdity of it all. 2 weeks, a padlock, and an HOA president's fury. But I survived, and justice in its own quiet way hummed softly, like the echo of a horn finally silenced. Sometimes suburban life is chaos. Sometimes a padlock and patience are exactly what it takes to survive it. And if this story resonated, like the video, share your own tales of standing up to boundary-crossing Karens. How would you handle it?